Today I'm out in the shop replacing the third brake light, or the high stop brake light, and rear bed compartment lights on my 2005 F-150 Lariat, but this applies to all 2004 to 2008 F-150s, or really any probably F-150 that has a high back tail light, because it's just a matter of a couple of screws and 3 sockets, 1 socket for each of the bulbs that's inside of this assembly. Before I get started, I'd like to say, if you find this video helpful, consider subscribing and watching my other videos. I have many videos on general automotive work, modifications, and tips. So if you find this video helpful, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's not a matter that this is a difficult task. It's just the 2 screws and then the 3 light bulb sockets to replace it. But this seal goes bad, and you can see that mine is cracked here in a spot, and it's cracked around where the screw goes in on the housing. And once this starts to leak, there's a channel in the back of the cab here that goes down on each side and goes down to the cab corners, and this can allow the cab corners to rust out. So we want to make sure that this seal is good. And if you haven't replaced your third brake light on your 2004 to 2008 F-150, you need to do so as soon as possible to avoid getting water into your truck. Now, another telltale sign besides your cab corners rusting out, by that time it's too late, you're in trouble, like I am. Mine are already rusting out, possibly from other moisture that's gotten in them, but this is one contributor. Another telltale sign, though, that this is leaking often is your headliner starts to get stains on it. Mine is like new, it doesn't have any stains on it, but once I take this off, I'll show you what that channel looks like in there, the channel that can hold the water. I'll time lapse this for you. Yep, 2 Phillips head screws, and then the assembly just pulls straight up. It's got a couple of locator pins in it here. You can see that I knew mine was leaking before I ordered the new one. I tried to apply some sealer to it, but wasn't very effective. And you see my 1/4 turn looks like it's burnt out. My third stoplight looks like it's overheated. These are just a 1/4 turn. Just turn them a 1/4 turn. When they pull out, that one looks like it's overheated too. They just push in and then a 1/4 turn clockwise. But you can tell this seal gets hard over time, and it feels solid right there. It needs to be spongy in order to seal properly. So let me set that aside, and you can tell here's the channel on the inside, and you can see the holes to the interior. That's the headliner is down there, down inside here, and water can get into the headliner there if it really gets thick in here. But it's got quite a channel here, about 2 inches before it'll do that, and then it runs that way inside that channel, and it runs that way, both to the driver's side on the left and to the passenger side on the right, and it'll go down and get in the channel. That those cab corners are just a connection. It gets in the channel on the cab bottom, that bottom frame channel on the bottom of the cab, and that can all rot out, all on this leaking. So is this a poor design? I would say so. Anything that's designed that as it gets old, it has a tendency to leak, and you can contain the water in this area. You could have put a pan in here or something so that water couldn't get in these holes, so that water would have to go through a drain or something down in, and you could run the drain down past the cab corners or whatever. I don't know, but you could have stopped the water from leaking here with some kind of a tray, and or designed it for water to get in here and then get out some way. Ford did not do that, so I consider that a design flaw. But so that's why we're replacing that third taillight assembly. So I don't know if this one's burnt out. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's overheating though in that socket. And since I'm here, and when you're here, you could replace these with LED bulbs. I'm going to replace that with a new bulb from my kit. Let's see if I got one here. Those are 921s. And I've written on my kit, the 921 is pulls 0.5 amps if you're interested. I think I talk about that when I add lights into my interior of my F-150, the different amperages. So corresponds with the different brightnesses. And these are typically instrument cluster lights for these two, the 120 or the 168 and the 194. So the 168 is brighter, pulls more amps than the 194, if you're interested. Maybe you're not. So looks like that might be broken a little bit. New bulb that's broken. So let's see if I got another one. Replace that one. And then the new third brake light assembly. And you can see the new seal on it is what we're after to make sure this one doesn't leak. And this one came with the mini wiring harness here, so you could just unplug it, plug it back in. But I'm not going to use it. I'm going to reuse my old wiring harness. This assembly came with new bulbs. It's pretty nice. It's pretty cheap. It's about $18 or something from Rock Auto. And I think I'm gonna use one of the new bulbs of that new harness for that one. So if that socket continues to burn, at least I've got another new harness if I need to use one. And as I'm looking at it, if you look down on the sides here, there's actually a hole right down here. So I said there's 2 inches before the headliner gets wet. That's not true. There's a hole right there and there's a hole over there. So it doesn't take much water and the headliner's getting damp. So if your headliner's smelling moldy or stained, your brake light is probably leaking. The new Chinese made assembly doesn't have the same sockets as my original equipment light had. So 2 different bulb sockets. So I'm going to have to replace this little wiring harness. And to do that, I just went inside the truck and pulled out the 2 headliner push-ins for the headliner in the back here, and I opened my rear window slightly so I can reach up into the headliner from this way, because that connection is right over here up underneath between the headliner and the metal roof. And it just has a push, pinch, and pull it out. Just pinch it and pull it out. The problem is, if you haven't done it before, it's going to be tough doing it without seeing it like I just did it, and probably just as tough putting the new one back in. But at least the 2 of them look similar. So even though the light sockets are completely different, maybe it works on some trucks but not on mine. But this is the new on the right, and the OEM on the left. So let's put just a little bit of dielectric grease on that. I know that's on the inside of the cab. Helps it go together easier, and it helps keep the moisture out of electrical connectors. Probably not as important inside the cab, but especially since I can't see it, doing it blind, I want it to go together easy, and I want to make sure it goes together and clicks, so I don't have to get back up into that headliner again and mess with it. So, a little dielectric grease, and thread it back in the hole that it came out of. So here's a tip that the female part of this that this plugs into is mounted to the sheet metal there with a couple push-in tabs, and you don't have to remove it, but the push-in tab is down, so it's away from you like that, so it goes in like that. So has this side to help locate it, and once you get this started, it'll push right in, make sure it clicks. Oh, my two bed lights come on. That's a good sign. That means I got it plugged in correctly, and I'll have to use my tool and actuate the brake light, make sure that works. Not necessary unless you're using a really high temperature bulb. You're not supposed to get finger oil on those bulbs, but I just want a clean bulb. So let me go back and wipe this bulb down. A little bit of dielectric grease on each of these sockets. I'll time lapse that for you. Well, that'll help them go together easier and come apart easier the next time and seal a little bit. I didn't show it, but I used denatured alcohol on a clean paper towel to clean the wax and grease from around the opening and a little dust and dirt off of it. That will help the new gasket seal better. And you can tell from this view that I also used anti-seize on the nuts previously. So I'd recommend a little anti-seize to prevent the rust and screws from corroding together. So just insert them. And a quarter turn. And put the mounting little push-in for the wire harness holder back in. Can get this back on camera. Okay, I actuated the brake light. I had that inserted all three bulbs, and it's still got the protective film on it. It's just a matter of putting the two screws back in then. Make sure the locator pins are inserted in their holes. And as you're putting these screws back in there, they don't require a lot of pressure or you'll crack the stoplight assembly. Just make sure they're inserted into the little nut. You can feel they got some spring to them now with the new gasket in here. Kind of nice. So I'm pushing down on the housing as I'm screwing it in, so the force to push it down isn't being taken on by the screw. Just tightening it up. Just a matter of taking the protective plastic off. Okay, so that's the protective plastic, and that's the light without the plastic on it. Looks pretty nice. It's a nice product, even though it's cheap. $20 on Rock Auto again, their cheapest brake light assembly. So I still have to put my headliner back together. These are just push-in to mount the headliner in the back. Well, that concludes the video. If you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, and please subscribe. I look forward to your comments.